Over the years, there's been arguably no bigger innovation to get people into boating than the outboard motor. In the early 1900s, when the likes of Evinrude, Johnson, and later Mercury began to crank out their affordable power options, it did wonders for getting people out on the water en masse. Outboard motor brands have come and gone, been bought and sold, and continue to evolve through technology and innovation. But where do all the engines go when they become obsolete? Well, today we're going to take a deep dive into the world of the outboard motor. You think we could be in the right place?
Hey!
Hey, Sandy.
Welcome, come on in.
Thanks for having us. Holy smokes. This is absolutely incredible, Sandy.
Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure.
So this right here is where the story of the outboard motor starts.
Absolutely. The very first outboard motor brand was Waterman. 1906 was the first outboard motor, which was a Waterman. Spring of 1907, Carmen Waterman got his patent for the outboard motor, which was called the boat propelling device. These are considered very collectible motors in our hobby. This predated Evinrude, predated Johnson, predated Mercury. This is where the outboard motor started. The thought was that if he could turn a canoe or a rowboat into a power boat, there was a niche there. He was 100% correct. But as fate would have it, he was a great engineer, he wasn't a good marketer. And then other companies came along very shortly thereafter, like Evinrude, that were very good marketing companies. Soon thereafter, Waterman went out of business.
And that's why we would hear a lot more about Evinrude or Johnson or Mercury than we would about Waterman.
Correct.
Would he have adapted an inboard motor and turned it into what we see here?
This is a very old inboard motor. It's a Waterman. This motor is approximately 1905 to 1910. Common belief is that the Waterman started with the inboard motor and then from that engineered an outboard motor. 4-cylinder, 2-stroke, so no valves again. To start this motor, what you would do is you would put gasoline into the primer cups. Open up the spigot, suck the gas into the cylinder heads, then close the primer cups, and now you're ready to start the motor and spin the flywheel fast enough to make the motor engage.
Somebody who did have better marketing, and a guy we hear about a lot, was Ole Evinrude, and you've got a few of his engines over here.
This is Ole Evinrude. He is generally accepted and considered the founder and the creator of the outboard motor. Ole Evinrude patented in 1910 the marine propulsion mechanism.
So we had the boat propelling device, and now we've got the marine propulsion mechanism.
Correct.
What made Evinrude stick?
Evinrude was very, very good at marketing. They used women in their advertising, which was revolutionary at the time. By 1916, Waterman ceased to make outboard motors, and Evinrude, they were making so many they couldn't keep up with the orders. Sportsmen, hunters, fishermen, cottagers, everybody wanted an outboard motor for motorizing around their lake, their cottage, their river.
Where did Alto come into play?
Evinrude sold Evinrude motors to OMC, Outboard Motor Company. He served, I believe it was a 3-year non-compete. He then came back and formed the company Elto, E-L-T-O, Evinrude Light Twin Outboard. And Elto took off and was incredibly successful as well. He sold that one to OMC as well. So the Johnson outboard motor came into being in the 1920s and was very predominant in the 20s and 30s. It signified the mass production of motors. A good motor at a good price point, but really didn't change the industry that much. What did change the industry is Carl Kiekhaefer. Kiekhaefer bought Thor Motors, Cedarburg Manufacturing Company, in 1939 and renamed it Kiekhaefer Mercury. There's nothing really special about this at all. It was very crude, very basic, but this is where it started. Mercury, in the early 1940s, came out with this motor, which was one of his first successful motors, called the Comet. 2 cylinders, a very good motor at that time, but what the key to their success was, they underrated their horsepower. So 2 kids on a lake would have 2 different boats, 2 different motors. You would have a 10 horsepower Evinrude, I've a 10 horsepower Mercury. We'd race, the 10 horsepower Mercury would win every time because my 10 horsepower Mercury was 15 horsepower. Your 10 horsepower Evinrude was probably 8 horsepower. So the image was Mercury's are faster motors, they're better motors, they're higher performance motors. I want me one of them there, Mercury Outboards. Kieckhofer in the 50s came out with another innovation, and that was colors. So the anti-Henry Ford, you can have any color you want as long as it's black. Carl Kieckhofer said you can have any color you want in the spectrum to match your fiberglass boat.
How did we get from these to that 100-horse race engine over there?
The 1950s were considered the golden era of hydroplane racing. Just like cars, more horsepower is better. Well, here's 40 horse, here's 60 horse. So Kieckhofer sensed that and immediately went to the first production 100 horsepower motor. And that turned the industry again on its ear. The motors going up to as much as 100 horsepower could be used on bigger boats. And that appealed to more people as opposed to only inboard motors previous to that. Mercury came out in '62 with the first 100 horsepower production engine, straight six, which they had previous to that, but it wasn't 100 horsepower. First year for black outboard motors, and in the world of outboard motors, this made a change that a lot of those other companies never caught up with.
And I guess the rest, as they say, is history.
The rest is history.
Well, Sandy, we can't thank you enough for having us out to walk through the history of the outboard motor. We've got such a cool setup here, and we're so excited we got to come in and see it.
What intrigues me the most about this is sharing the story with other people.
Well, we're happy to have you do it with us.
Thank you for being here today.